The chamber was huge, and it stretched so far that Karen Wright could barely see the end of it. She stood on a platform that floated in the middle of the room, and around her were the representatives of 200 alien species. Some of them had scales, and some had fur, and some were made of something that looked like living crystal. All of them were staring at her, and none of them looked friendly. Karen kept her face calm, and her hands were behind her back. She had been a diplomat for 15 years, and she knew how to hide what she was feeling. Next to her stood Captain Lewis Hayes in his dark blue uniform, and on her other side was Dr. Patricia Cole, who carried a data tablet. The three of them were the only humans in a room filled with thousands of aliens. Overlord Dexiner rose from his seat at the center of the chamber. He was tall and had 4 eyes that blinked one at a time, and his skin was the color of deep purple. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator that made it sound flat and emotionless. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," he said, and the room went silent. "Humanity is expelled from council membership, effective immediately." Karen had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a punch to the stomach. She kept her expression neutral. Vexener continued reading from a document that floated in front of him. "The charges against humanity are numerous and serious. You expand too quickly into territories without proper authorization. You ask questions about subjects that are forbidden. You modify your own genetics, which violates the natural form doctrine. You create artificial intelligence, which is against the synthetic life ban. You refuse to use the approved hyperspace lanes. You ignore our trade regulations. You question our authority." He paused and looked directly at Karen. "Most seriously, you represent a danger to the established order of galactic civilization. Your species does not respect boundaries. You do not accept limits. You are too aggressive and too unpredictable and too dangerous." Around the chamber, several alien representatives made gestures or sounds that Karen had learned meant agreement. The council had made up its mind long before this hearing. "Therefore," Vexener said, "Earth is hereby quarantined. No human ship may leave your solar system. No alien ship may enter it. We will place enforcement stations at the edge of your system. Any attempt to break the quarantine will result in military action. You are cut off from all trade and all communication and all contact with the rest of galactic civilization." Karen waited for him to finish. She had prepared several speeches for this moment. She had arguments and appeals and evidence that might change some minds. But looking around the chamber, she realized none of it would matter. The council wanted humanity gone, and they had the votes to make it happen. So instead of arguing, Karen simply nodded once. "We understand," she said. "We will leave immediately." This seemed to surprise Vexener. He had clearly expected her to beg or threaten or make some dramatic statement. Instead, Karen gathered her papers and turned to leave. As she walked toward the exit, she caught the eye of Ambassador Clickstar of the Zenthari. The insectoid being had been one of only 7 species to vote against the expulsion. Clickstar made a small gesture with one of her antennae that meant something like good luck or safe journey. Karen nodded back. The walk to the shuttle bay felt very long. Lewis and Patricia walked beside her in silence. Other aliens moved out of their way, and some of them whispered to each other. Karen kept her head high and her pace steady. Only when they were inside the shuttle, the door had sealed, did Lewis finally speak. "They have no idea what they just did." Patricia laughed quietly and pulled up a holographic screen. "Not even a little bit. They think they won." Karen allowed herself to smile now that no one could see her. "How long until the Henderson drive is ready?" 2 months if we push hard," Patricia said. "Maybe less." The Henderson drive was humanity's secret. For 10 years, while they had been members of the council, they had smiled and used the hyperspace technology that the aliens gave them. But the whole time, human scientists had been working on something different. Something better? Something that did not need the council's hyperspace lanes at all, Dr. Gregg. Henderson had built it in a private laboratory funded by governments and corporations who knew this day might come. The drive worked by folding space in tiny increments instead of ripping a hole through it like traditional hyperspace. It was faster and cleaner, and it left almost no energy signature that sensors could detect. The council had no idea it existed. "What about the colony ships?" Karen asked. Lewis pulled up his own display. The Wanderer and the Horizon and the New Dawn are ready. 3,000 people on each ship. We have been keeping them on standby for 2 years. Karen leaned back in her seat as the shuttle left the Council homeworld behind. Through the window, she could see the planet getting smaller. It was beautiful, with 3 moons and rings of ice that sparkled in the light of its sun. But she did not feel sad to leave it. Where will they go? She asked. Patricia scrolled through star charts. We have identified 40 planets that could support human life. All of them are beyond Council space. Some are in regions the Council thinks are too far away to bother with. Some are in areas they have marked as dangerous or worthless on their maps, and we know better. We sent probe ships 2 years ago using prototype Henderson drives, Patricia explained. The planets are perfect. Better than Earth in some cases. Garden worlds with no intelligent life and resources beyond anything we could have hoped for. Lewis was looking at tactical displays. The Council enforcement fleet will arrive at Earth in about 6 weeks. By then, the colony ships will already be gone. By the time the Council realizes we are not sitting quietly in our solar system, we will have established 3 colonies and sent out a dozen more ships. Karen looked at both of them. The Council thinks they have caged us. They have set us free, Patricia said. The shuttle docked with the Earth's diplomatic vessel, and Karen went immediately to the bridge. Captain Henry Shaw saluted her, and she waved it away. Set course for Earth, she ordered. Maximum speed. Yes, ma'am, Henry said. What should I tell the crew? Karen thought about it. The crew deserved to know what had happened, but they also deserved to understand what it meant. Tell them the Council has expelled us, she said. Tell them we are going home. And tell them that when we get there, the real work begins. As the ship jumped to hyperspace for the last time, Karen stood at the window and looked back at Council space. Somewhere out there were 200 species who thought they had just solved a problem. They thought they had removed a dangerous and unpredictable element from their perfect ordered civilization. They were wrong. Humanity had spent 30 years trying to fit into the Council's rules, trying to be what the aliens wanted them to be, following regulations that made no sense and accepting limits that served no purpose except to keep the Council in control. Now they were free of all that. Free to build their own ships and explore their own territories and develop their own technology. Free to be what humans had always been best at being, which was curious and innovative and unstoppable. Patricia came to stand beside her. You know, she said, I almost feel sorry for them, for the Council. They spent 50,000 years building their civilization. They made all these rules and regulations and systems. They think they have everything figured out. Patricia smiled. And then humans showed up and asked why. Why do you do it this way? Why not try something different? Why are these areas forbidden? Why can't we look at that? Just why? And they could not handle it, Karen said. They could not handle us. Patricia agreed. So they kicked us out, thinking that would solve the problem. Instead, they just gave us permission to stop trying to fit in. Lewis joined them at the window. What do you think will happen? Karen considered the question. I think we are going to build something amazing. I think we are going to explore parts of the galaxy the Council never bothered with. I think we are going to advance faster in the next 10 years than we did in the last 100. And then, Lewis asked, and then one day the Council is going to look up and realize that humanity is not a small quarantined species anymore. We will be something they never expected and never prepared for. Karen turned away from the window. But that is a problem for future us. Right now, we need to focus on getting home and getting to work. The ship traveled through hyperspace, and Karen returned to her cabin to begin writing her report. President Marcus Klein would want to know everything that happened. But more importantly, he would want to know what came next. Karen smiled as she began typing. What came next was going to be extraordinary. Commander Vexkull watched the display screens in his command center. Felt satisfied with what he saw. His fleet of 12 enforcement ships had arrived at the edge of the Sol system and were now deploying the quarantine buoys. Each buoy was equipped with sensors and weapons and artificial intelligence that would detect and destroy any ship trying to leave the system. Position confirmed on buoy 17, reported his tactical officer. All systems operational. Vexel nodded and made a note in his log. The primitive humans were now contained, and the galaxy was safe from their reckless behavior. In a few generations, they would forget about the stars and accept their place. As a quarantined species, it had happened before with other dangerous civilizations. What Vexel did not know was that 3 human execs had left the Sol system for weeks before his arrival. They had used the Henderson drive, which produced no hyperspace signature, and moved on trajectories that Council sensors were not designed to detect. The ships had accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible, and they were now hundreds of light. Years away, the Wanderer was the first to reach its destination. Captain Julie Morgan stood on the bridge and watched as the planet filled the viewscreen. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents and white clouds that swirled in patterns across the atmosphere. "Scanning complete," announced the science officer Ben Harris. "Oxygen, nitrogen, atmosphere. Temperature range suitable for human habitation. No signs of intelligent life. Plant and animal life present, but nothing dangerous. Water is clean and drinkable." Julie felt her heart beat faster. "Are we really the first ones here?" Ben checked his readings again. According to Council records, this system is marked as unexplored and low priority. They never bothered to send a ship this far out. "Then I claimed this world in the name of humanity," Julie said with a grin. "Welcome to Haven, everyone." The 3,000 colonists aboard the Wanderer cheered. They had spent 3 weeks in space wondering if the new world would really be everything the probe data had promised. Now they could see it with their own eyes, and it was perfect. On Earth, President Marcus Klein stood before the cameras and addressed the entire planet. His speech was being broadcast to every screen and every device and every person who wanted to listen. "My fellow humans," he began. 6 weeks ago, the Galactic Council expelled us from their civilization. They called us dangerous and unpredictable. They said we asked too many questions and refused to follow their rules. They were right about all of it. He paused and smiled. The Council thought they were punishing us, but they were wrong. They have freed us. For 30 years, we tried to fit into their system. We followed their regulations even when they made no sense. We used their technology even though we could build better. We stayed within their boundaries even though the galaxy is vast and mostly unexplored. Marcus gestured to the holographic display behind him that showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Council space, which covered maybe 1/5 of the total area. The rest was unmarked and unexplored and waiting. "Today I announced the Exodus Initiative," Marcus said. "We will not waste time begging the Council to take us back. Instead, we will do what humanity has always done best. We will explore and expand and build and thrive. The Council controls a small portion of the galaxy, and they have been content with that for 50,000 years. We will not be so timid," pointed to areas on the map that were far from Council space. "Our colony ships are already on their way to new worlds. The Wanderer has reached a planet we are calling Haven. The Horizon is traveling to a system with 3 habitable planets. The New Dawn is heading to a world that our probes say has resources beyond anything we have ever seen." Image changed to show construction happening in orbit around Earth. Massive shipyards that had been building trade vessels were now being converted to build colony ships and exploration vessels, and deep space stations were not hiding in our solar system waiting for the Council to change their minds, Marcus continued. "We are moving forward. We are building a future that does not depend on their approval or their technology or their permission. And we invite every human who dreams of seeing new worlds to join us." In one of those orbital shipyards, Chief Engineer Lisa Park supervised the construction of the largest ship humanity had ever built. The Pathfinder was 5 kilometers long and would carry 10,000 colonists to a star cluster that the Council had marked as too far away to be worth exploring. Her assistant Sam Porter climbed up the scaffolding to join her. "The hull plating is ahead of schedule," he said. "We should be ready for the drive installation next week." Lisa looked down at the massive frame of the ship. "How is this possible? We are building faster than we ever did for the Council." Turns out, when you do not have to follow 1,000 different safety regulations from 200 different species, things go much quicker. Half of those rules were just bureaucracy anyway. The council wanted control more than they wanted efficiency. Lisa agreed. Below them, workers from a dozen countries moved in organized teams. They were welding and wiring and installing systems. There was an energy in the air that Lisa had not felt in years. People were excited about the work they were doing. They were building something that mattered. On the planet Mars in the domed city of New Beijing, Dr. Greg Henderson received a transmission from the Wanderer. He read the report twice to make sure he understood it correctly, and then he started laughing. His assistant, Cole Baker, looked up from her workstation. "Good news?" "The Henderson drive performed even better than we predicted," Greg said. "The Wanderer made the journey in 3 weeks. Council ships would have taken 6 months using their hyperspace lanes." Nicole came over to look at the data. "And no degradation to the drive systems?" "None at all. If anything, the drive is more stable than our simulations suggested." Greg pulled up the technical readings. "We built something that does not just match Council technology. We built something that surpasses it completely." "How is that possible?" Nicole asked. "The Council has had 50,000 years to develop their hyperspace drives." Greg leaned back in his chair and looked at the equations on his screen. "I think that is exactly the problem. They developed the technology 50,000 years ago, and then they stopped improving it. They found something that worked, and they never questioned whether it could be better." He pulled up a comparison chart, showing the Council's hyperspace technology. Next to the Henderson drive, their system is like building roads through space. Everyone has to use the same paths. Our system is like learning to fly. We can go anywhere we want, in any direction. Nicole studied the data. "You know what this means, right? If we can move faster than them and go places they cannot follow, then we are not really quarantined at all." "Exactly," Greg said. "Vexkel is sitting at the edge of our solar system thinking he has us trapped. But we are already gone. We are already building colonies and exploring new systems and doing everything the Council said we could not do." On the colony world Haven, the first prefabricated habitats were being assembled. They had landed in a valley near a river with mountains in the distance and forests nearby. The air smelled clean, and the sun was warm, and everything felt like anew. Beginning, Captain Julie Morgan walked through the settlement site with Governor Claire Mitchell, who had been elected by the colonists during the journey. Together they watched as the construction teams raised the first buildings. "This is really happening," Claire said quietly. "We are really starting over on a new world." Julie nodded. "And the Council has no idea. According to their sensors, we should all be sitting on Earth feeling sorry for ourselves. How long before they figure it out?" "Years, probably," Julie said. "By the time they realize what we have done, we will have dozens of colonies. Maybe hundreds. We will be too spread out and too established for them to do anything about it." Claire looked up at the sky, where 2 moons were visible, even during the day. "Do you think other species will join us? The ones who voted against the expulsion?" "Maybe," Julie said, "if they are brave enough to leave the Council's protection. But even if they do not, we will be fine. Humans are very good at starting over." Back on Earth in the underground laboratory, where the Henderson drive had been invented, Dr. Raymond Foster was analyzing Council technology with new eyes. Now that humanity was no longer part of the Council, he could examine their devices without worrying about breaking any agreements. What he found made him angry. He brought his findings to Greg Henderson, who studied the data in silence for several minutes. "They deliberately limited the technology they gave us," Raymond said. "The hyperspace drives they shared with all the client species are intentionally inefficient. They can build much better drives, but they keep that technology for themselves."
Ow.
Greg nodded slowly. "Control through dependence. If everyone relies on Council technology and Council hyperspace lanes, then everyone stays under Council authority." "It is worse than that," Raymond continued. "I found evidence that they have been doing this for thousands of years. Every new species that joins the Council gets the same limited technology. No one is allowed to develop their own faster than light travel. No one is allowed to explore beyond Council-approved routes." Greg asked. "Then they get labeled as dangerous and unpredictable," Raymond said. "Just like us." Greg stood and walked to the window that looked out over the Martian landscape. In the distance, he could see the lights of the city, and above that the stars. They created a system where no one can challenge them, he said, where innovation is discouraged and independence is punished. They have been running the galaxy like this for 50,000 years. And now we have broken free, Raymond said. We have better technology, and we are not afraid to use it. Greg turned back to face him. Then we need to make sure every human colony and every Huma. Greg pulled up a simulation. If these calculations are correct, we could cut travel time in half. A journey that takes 3 weeks now would take 10 days. Nicole whistled. The Council would pay anything for technology like this. The Council will never have technology like this, Greg said firmly. This is ours. We developed it without their help, and we are keeping it. Any species that wants to join our Federation can have access to it, but the Council gets nothing. You really do not like them, do you? Greg turned to look at her. I do not like that they held back the entire galaxy for 50,000 years. I do not like that they suppressed innovation to maintain their power. I do not like that they punished us for asking questions. So no, I do not like them very much. Far from Earth, on a planet that had been deemed worthless by Council surveys, a human geological team made a discovery that would change everything. They found ruins buried beneath the surface. Structures that were clearly artificial and clearly ancient. The team leader called it in immediately and within 2 weeks. Dr. Patricia Cole herself arrived to examine the site. What she found were buildings and machinery from a civilization that had died out long before the Council even existed. These are Forerunner ruins, Patricia breathed as she examined the inscriptions on a wall. The Council knows about the Forerunners. They base half their technology on Forerunner discoveries. But they never mentioned finding ruins like this. Her assistant scanned the structures. There is still active technology here. Some of these machines are still powered after tens of thousands of years. Patricia felt her heart race. If they could study Forerunner technology directly instead of relying on Council interpretations, they could advance human science by centuries. Set up a research base here immediately. I want teams studying every inch of this site. As the sun set on the planet, Patricia stood among the ancient ruins and thought about what this meant. The Council had found Forerunner sites, and they had kept them secret. They had built their entire civilization on stolen technology, and then they had stopped looking for more, but humans would not stop looking, and now they were finding things the Council had missed or deliberately hidden. The galaxy was full of secrets, and humanity was going to uncover all of them. Ambassador Clickstar of the Zenthari sat in her private chambers, reviewing intelligence reports, and her antennae twitched with growing concern. The Zenthari were known throughout the galaxy as the best information gatherers, and what Clickstar was seeing in these reports worried her deeply. Human ships had been spotted in 6 different sectors, and all of them were far beyond the quarantine zone. They were not using Council hyperspace lanes, and they moved faster than any known technology should allow. Her agents had confirmed at least 50 human colonies and regions the Council had never explored. She began composing a message to the High Council, but before she could finish her communication, panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The source coordinates made her freeze because they showed a location 200 light years beyond the furthest Council outpost. The face that appeared on her screen was human and female, with sharp eyes and a confident smile. Clickstar recognized her immediately. Ambassador Clickstar, the woman said. I am Karen Wright, and we met briefly at the Council chambers 2 years ago. Ambassador Wright, Clickstar replied carefully. You appear to be transmitting from well outside your quarantine zone. I am transmitting from the human colony of Pioneers Rest in the outer Perseus Arm, Karen said calmly. We have 42 colonies now, and more are being established every month. Clickstar felt her compound eyes widen. That should be impossible according to our sensors. Your sensors detect hyperspace signatures, Karen explained. We do not use hyperspace anymore. We developed our own faster-than-light technology called the Henderson Drive, and it is considerably more efficient than anything the Council has. Why are you telling me this? Clickstar asked. Karen's expression became serious. Because the Zinthari voted against our expulsion, and because your species values truth and knowledge above politics. You deserve to know what is coming. What is coming? Change, Karen said simply. The Council has been the only major power in the galaxy for 50,000 years, but that era is ending. Not because we seek conflict, but because we refuse to be contained. We are building something new out here, and it does not require the Council's approval. Clickstar processed this information carefully. The Council will not accept a rival power. The Council may not have a choice, Karen replied. But that is not why I contacted you today. I am offering the Zinthari an opportunity to join us. Your species has always valued exploration and discovery, but Council regulations have held you back. Join our Federation instead, and help us build something better. Transmission ended, and Clickstar sat alone with a decision that could change the future of her entire species. On Earth, the Global Assembly gathered to hear a report from Admiral Kevin Wright, who had just returned from a 6-month expedition to the Galactic Core region. He stood before the Assembly with holographic displays showing images of massive structures orbiting dead stars. These are Forerunner installations, Kevin announced. The species that existed before the Council and the ones that Council. Mythology claims ascended to a higher plane of existence. The Assembly Chamber, filled with whispers and gasps. They did not ascend, Kevin continued. They died out approximately 60,000 years ago, but they left behind technology that makes everything the Council has looked primitive. And the Council knows about these sites. They have been deliberately hiding them and suppressing all research into Forerunner civilization. Dr. Patricia Cole stepped forward with her own data. We have analyzed 3 separate Forerunner facilities, and what we found is extraordinary. Their understanding of physics and energy and biology was centuries ahead of current galactic science. With access to their knowledge, we could advance human technology faster than anyone thought possible. Assembly member Christopher Lee stood up angrily. How long has the Council been hiding this? At least 30,000 years based on our analysis, Patricia confirmed. They built their entire civilization on Forerunner technology, and then they stopped innovating. They had been coasting on ancient discoveries while keeping everyone else at the same limited technological level. President Marcus Klein addressed the Assembly. This is why they feared us. Not because we are violent or dangerous, but because we ask questions and we innovate, and we refuse to accept that current knowledge is final knowledge. We threaten their comfortable stagnation simply by being ourselves. The implications spread through the Assembly like wildfire. The Council, which presented itself as the pinnacle of galactic civilization, was actually a stagnant empire built on lies and suppressed innovation. What do we do with this information? Someone asked. Marcus looked around the room at the assembled representatives. We share it with every species in Council space and beyond. We show them that their leaders have been lying to them for 30,000 years. We show them there is another way that will destabilize the entire Council, warned Foreign Minister Helen Brooks. A system built on lies deserves to be destabilized, Marcus said firmly. We will offer an alternative, which is the Human Federation, open to any species that values freedom and innovation and truth. Within 2 weeks, Karen's message to the Zinthari had spread, through secret channels to a dozen other species. The revelation about Forerunner technology suppression followed close behind. The carefully maintained image of the Council as benevolent leaders began to crack and crumble. On the Council homeworld, Overlord Dexiner convened an emergency session as reports flooded in from across Council space. Human colonies spotted far beyond the quarantine zone. Human technology that should not exist. Ancient secrets being exposed to the entire galaxy. How did we lose control so completely? Demanded Councilmember Verazan of the Krell Collective ambassador. Clickstar, who had decided to attend this session despite the personal risks, spoke up. We never had control. We only convinced ourselves that we did. You knew about this? Dexinor accused? I know about it now, Clickstar replied calmly. And I believe the Council must decide how to respond because ignoring this is no longer possible. The chamber erupted in arguments as different species blamed each other and demanded action. Some called for military strikes against human colonies. Others insisted on negotiation. A few suggested that maybe the humans had a point about council policies. The Xenar called for order, but the chaos continued. Finally, he made a decision that he knew would be controversial. "We will send an expedition to verify these claims about Forerunner sites," he announced. "If the humans are telling the truth, then we must reconsider our policies. If they are lying, then we will have proof of their deception." But even as he spoke, the Xenar knew the truth. The humans were not lying, and the Council's age of dominance was coming to an end. In a secret meeting chamber deep beneath the Council building, 3 species. Representatives met in private. They were the Zenthari and the Voidwalkers and the Crystalline Collective. All 3 had voted against the human expulsion, and all 3 had been gathering information about what humanity had accomplished. "The humans have offered us membership in their federation," said the Zenthari rep. Representative. "They promise free technology sharing and unlimited exploration rights. The Council will see this as betrayal," warned the Voidwalker delegate. "Council has already betrayed us," replied the Crystalline representative. "They have held back our development for thousands of years. They have lied about the Forerunners and suppressed innovation to maintain their own power." The Zenthari representative made a gesture of agreement. "I have reviewed human technology and their society structure. They genuinely share knowledge freely among their colonies. They encourage innovation instead of regulating it. They explore constantly instead of staying within established boundaries." "Then we are agreed?" asked the Voidwalker. All 3 representatives signaled their assent. Within the month, their species would formally withdraw from the Galactic Council and petition to join the Human Federation. On Haven Governor, Claire Mitchell received the news with a mixture of excitement and concern. "3 species want to join us already?" Karen Wright, who was visiting the colony, nodded. "And there will be more. Once other species see that they can leave the Council without being destroyed, they will start asking questions about why they stayed so long. Can we handle this kind of growth?" Claire asked. "You have to," Karen replied. "Because if we turn them away, we become just like the Council. Exclusive and controlling and afraid of change." Dr. Patricia Cole arrived with more news from the Forerunner research sites. "We have made a breakthrough," she announced. "We found a data archive that is still functional after 60,000 years." "What kind of data?" Karen asked. Patricia pulled up holographic text that had been translated from the Forerunner language. Instructions and warnings left for whoever came after them. And a message that explains what happened to their civilization. The message was clear and direct. The Forerunners had achieved incredible technological advancement, but they had become comfortable and stopped innovating. When a crisis came in the form of a galactic plague, they had no new ideas to combat it because they had spent 10,000 years simply maintaining what they already had instead of pushing forward. They left this message as a warning, Patricia said. They wanted future civilizations to know that stagnation is death, that comfort is dangerous, that you must always keep exploring and questioning and innovating, or you will not survive. Karen read the message twice. "The Council is making the exact same mistake." "Exactly," Patricia agreed. "They found Forerunner technology, and instead of learning the lesson, they simply copied the technology and then stopped growing. They have been stagnant for 50,000 years. And we are the wake-up call they needed." Claire said on Earth President Marcus Klein prepared for a broadcast that would be seen across human space and hopefully beyond. He stood before the cameras knowing that what he was about to say would change everything. "People of the galaxy," he began. "For too long, the Galactic Council has controlled the narrative of what civilization should be. They have suppressed knowledge and limited technology and punished innovation. They exiled humanity because we asked questions they did not want to answer." He gestured to displays showing Forerunner ruins and human colonies and the new technologies that had been developed. "But we have discovered the truth. The Council built their power on lies and on technology they did not invent. They have been holding back the entire galaxy to maintain their dominance. Today we offer an alternative," Marcus continued. The Human Federation welcomes any species that wants to join us. We share technology freely. We encourage exploration and innovation. We believe that civilization is not a destination, but a journey, and the moment you stop moving forward, you begin to die. The broadcast reached across the stars, and species everywhere began to listen and question and wonder if maybe the humans were right. 5 years had passed since the exile, and the galaxy looked completely different from what it had been. President Marcus Klein stood on the observation deck of Federation headquarters, which was a massive station orbiting the water world of New Harmony. Below him, ships from dozens of species moved in organized patterns. As they traded goods and shared technology and traveled freely between worlds, the Human Federation now included 147 colony worlds and 6 major shipyards and a network of trade routes that bypassed Council space entirely. More importantly, 12 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council to join the Federation because they could no longer accept the lies and restrictions that had held them back for so long. Ambassador Clickstar joined Marcus at the window, and her antennae moved in a pattern that he had learned meant contentment. "It is remarkable how much has changed in such a short time," she said. "The Council forced our hand," Marcus replied. "If they had accepted us as equals, none of this would have happened." "Perhaps it needed to happen anyway," Clickstar suggested. The Council had grown too comfortable, and the galaxy needed someone to remind them that civilization requires constant effort and growth. Marcus looked at the latest intelligence reports on his data tablet. The Council was fracturing from within as member species demanded reforms and access to Forerunner research and freedom to innovate without excessive regulations. Some Council members wanted military action against the Federation, but strategic analyses showed that such a conflict would be devastating for both sides. "We have a visitor coming," Marcus said. "A Council delegation led by Overlord Dexiner himself."
Ow.
Clickstar's eyes widened. "He is coming here personally. He requested a meeting to discuss what he called terms of coexistence," Marcus explained. "His ship will arrive tomorrow." The next day, Marcus Klein stood in a neutral conference room with representatives from both the Federation and the Council. Dexiner looked older than Marcus remembered, and his 4 eyes seemed dimmed with exhaustion or perhaps regret. "President Klein," Dexiner began slowly, "I have come to discuss the future of our civilizations." "I am listening," Marcus said carefully. Dexiner gestured to the viewport where both Council and Federation ships could be seen. 5 years ago, the Council believed we were protecting galactic civilization by exiling humanity. We were wrong about many things. The admission sent quiet murmurs through both delegations. "We were wrong to hoard Forerunner knowledge," Dexner continued. "We were wrong to suppress innovation. We were wrong to believe our way was the only way. The Council has survived for 50,000 years by resisting change, but you have shown us that resistance is not strength, but slow death." Marcus waited for him to continue. "The Council now faces a choice," Dexner said. "We can cling to old ways and fade into irrelevance as more species join your Federation, or we can learn from our mistakes and find a new path forward. I have spent the past year arguing for reform, and a majority of Council members now accept that we cannot continue as we have been." "What are you proposing?" Marcus asked. "Summit," Dexiner replied. "Representatives from the Council and the Federation and the unaligned worlds. We discuss the future of the galaxy together as equals, not as rulers and subjects." Marcus considered this carefully. Some Federation members wanted the Council to dissolve completely and for the Federation to become the dominant power. But Marcus had never wanted dominance, and he knew that forcing the Council's collapse would create chaos across thousands of worlds. "I will bring your proposal to the Federation Assembly," Marcus said, "but I can tell you now that I support it. We did not build the Federation to replace the Council, but to show that another way was possible. If the Council is willing to reform and open up, then cooperation is better than conflict." 6 months later, the Summit of Worlds convened on a neutral planet that belonged to neither the Council nor the Federation. 147 species sent representatives, and the discussions were difficult and sometimes heated, but they kept moving forward. The result was the Galactic Accord, which created a new framework for how civilizations would interact. The Council would continue to exist, but with real representation and strict limits on its authority. The Federation would operate independently, but cooperatively. All Forerunner sites would be jointly researched, with discoveries shared freely among all species. Technology development would be unrestricted, and innovation would be encouraged rather than regulated. Most importantly, the Accord established that no single organization could claim total authority over galactic civilization. The age of the Council's monopoly on power had ended, and a new age of cooperation and competition and constant growth had begun. Dr. Patricia Cole, who now led the Joint Forerunner Research Initiative, made a discovery that seemed to perfectly capture the meaning of this new era. Deep in an ancient facility, she found a message that the Forerunners had left for whoever came after them. The message read simply: civilization is not a destination, but a journey, and the moment you stop moving forward, you begin to die. May those who find this never forget to keep exploring and questioning and pushing beyond what you know into what you might discover. Patricia shared this message at the next Galactic Assembly, where representatives from Council and Federation species now work together. The Forerunners understood something the Council forgot, she said. Progress requires discomfort, and growth requires challenge. The galaxy is vast beyond measure, and we have explored less than a tiny fraxio of it. There are wonders waiting and problems to solve and possibilities we cannot yet imagine. She looked around at the assembled representatives from dozens of different species. Humanity was exiled because we refused to stop asking questions and refused to accept that current knowledge was enough. That exile forced us to prove we could thrive alone, and in doing so, we showed everyone else that they could thrive. On Earth, Karen Wright gave a lecture to students at the Henderson Institute, which had become the premier school for advanced physics and engineering. The students came from a dozen different species now, because the Federation welcomed anyone who wanted to learn. Never forget the lesson of our exile, Karen told them. What seemed like our greatest defeat became our greatest opportunity. When the Council exiled us, they thought they were protecting themselves from humanity's dangerous curiosity. Instead, they freed us to become everything we were capable of being. She displayed an image of the galaxy showing the vast territories now explored, and the networks of cooperation spanning thousands of light years, and the mixing of cultures and ideas that had created more innovation in 5 years than the previous 1,000. The galaxy is bigger than the Council ever wanted to admit, Karen continued. It is full of mysteries and opportunities and challenges that their regulations could never have accommodated. They exiled Earth thinking they were locking us away, but instead they opened the door to infinite possibilities. And humanity smiled, she said with pride in her voice. We smiled because we knew exactly what to do with freedom. We explored beyond their borders and built beyond their expectations and dreamed beyond their limited vision of what civilization could be. We reminded the galaxy that the journey is far from over, and in fact, it has only just begun. The students applauded, and through the Institute windows they could see construction frames where new ships were being built. These ships would carry the next generation even further into the unknown regions of space, where no one had gone before. Governor Claire Mitchell stood in the central plaza of New Seattle-on-Haven and watched as her daughter played with children from 3 different species. The colony had grown to 50,000 people now, and it was thriving in ways that would have been impossible under Council regulations. Do you ever regret it? Asked Danny Ross, who stood beside her. Leaving Earth and coming out here to the unknown? Claire shook her head. Not for a second. The Council wanted us to be small and contained and grateful for whatever scraps of knowledge they chose to share. Out here, we can be as big as we dare to dream. She looked up at the sky where 2 moons hung in the afternoon light. Our children will grow up knowing that the universe is full of possibilities and that asking questions is not dangerous but necessary. They will never accept being told that something cannot be done just because it has never been tried before. The bridge of the exploration vessel Frontier Captain Julie Morgan reviewed the navigation charts for their next mission. They were heading to a region of space that no one had ever visited before, and the anticipation was almost overwhelming. "All systems ready," reported Ben Harris from the science station. "Henderson Drive is charged and ready." Julie smiled and gave the order. "Then let us see what is out there waiting to be found." The ship jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared into the darkness between stars where countless mysteries still waited. In his laboratory on Mars, Henderson worked on equations that would make the next generation of drives even faster and more efficient. He was 70 years old now, but his mind was as sharp as ever, and he had no intention of stopping. Nicole Baker brought him tea and looked at the calculations on his screens. "Still trying to break the laws of physics?" she asked with a smile. "The laws of physics are not walls," Greg replied. "They are puzzles waiting to be solved. The Council treated them as limits, but they are really just challenges." He pulled up a simulation showing a theoretical drive that could cross the entire galaxy in weeks instead of years. "This is possible," he said. "I know it is, and I am going to prove it." On the Council homeworld overlord, Dexner met with his advisors to discuss the latest reports from the reformed research programs. With access to Forerunner sites and freedom to innovate, Council scientists were making breakthroughs that had seemed impossible just years before. "We wasted 30,000 years, Dexner said quietly. "We could have been doing this all along." "But we were afraid," replied one of his advisors. "Afraid that too much change would destabilize our civilization. And instead our refusal to change nearly destroyed it," Dexner said. "The humans taught us that stability without growth is just stagnation wearing a different name." Looked at reports showing Council species working alongside Federation, members on joint projects and sharing discoveries and learning from each other. "Perhaps this is how it was always meant to be," he said. "Not one empire controlling everything, but many civilizations working together and challenging each other to be better. Across the galaxy on thousands of worlds belonging to hundreds of species, the message was spreading. The age of comfortable stagnation had ended, and the age of constant exploration had begun. The Galactic Council had exiled Earth thinking they were removing a threat, but instead they had created a catalyst for change that transformed everything. And humanity had smiled because they understood something the Council had forgotten. The universe did not reward those who played it safe and stayed within comfortable boundaries. It rewarded those who dared to ask questions and push limits and explore beyond what was known into what might be possible. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders, and now, for the first time in 50,000 years, civilization was moving forward again. Not because one species controlled everything, but because many species were free to innovate and compete and cooperate and dream. The journey was just beginning, and no one knew where it would lead, but that uncertainty was not something to fear. It was something to celebrate, because the unknown was where all the best discoveries waited, and humanity smiled and moved beyond.